Widowed millionaire suspected his nanny until he saw what she did with his son with Down syndrome. Ethan Miller sat alone in his spacious home office on the outskirts of Seattle. Outside, raindrops traced slow paths down the window, reflecting the pale light of a gray afternoon. He stared at his laptop screen, footage from a hidden camera playing before him. His heartbeat quickened, his hands trembled slightly. In the frame, Grace Thompson, the new caregiver, was kneeling on the living room floor. She held out her arms, her voice soft as a whisper. "Come here, Liam. You can do it." The little boy took a few uncertain steps, his face glowing with joy. When he reached her, Grace wrapped him in a tight embrace, laughing through tears. Liam laughed too, a bright, unguarded sound Ethan had never heard before. A real smile. Pure, fearless, alive. Ethan froze. He couldn't look away. His chest tightened painfully. Why did his son smile like that for a stranger, something he had never done for his own father? He replayed the video, then again, and again. Each time, the weight in his chest grew heavier. When he rubbed his face, he realized his cheeks were wet. He was crying, something he hadn't done since the day Emma, his wife, died on the delivery table. He had always told himself he loved his son, but watching that moment, he understood. He had never truly seen him. He'd never knelt down, never opened his arms, never smiled like Grace did. Grace wasn't extraordinary on the surface. She'd arrived in a simple uniform, hair tied back, wearing worn-out shoes. Yet the way she touched the world was different. She wasn't afraid to love. She wasn't afraid to care. She gave affection as if it was the most natural thing to do. Ethan leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. The doctor's voice from years ago echoed in his mind. "Your baby has Down syndrome. He'll need time, patience, and a lot of love." He had only heard the last word, love, and it terrified him, because his heart was already broken. He buried himself in work, designs, contracts, tall buildings. They kept him from facing reality. He hired nannies one after another. Each one left, saying the same thing. "The boy's too hard. He doesn't listen. He won't cooperate." Until Grace came. She didn't have fancy degrees or polished words. She'd simply said, "I can't promise miracles. I can only promise patience." Ethan had nodded without much thought. He just needed someone to fill the gap. But she filled it in ways he could never have imagined. In another clip, Grace sat on the floor beside Liam, who was playing with wooden blocks. She didn't instruct, didn't push. She just watched, smiling gently, and asked, "Which one do you like best?" Liam looked up and pointed to the blue one. Grace nodded. "That's my favorite, too." Her tone was warm, kind. Liam giggled, a sound so pure it made Ethan's chest ache. He stopped the video and leaned back, shame burning through him. He had watched her with suspicion, worried she might hurt or use his son. So he set the house to witness what he could not, becoming a quiet trespasser in his own life. But what he discovered wasn't her wrongdoing. It was his own absence. He hadn't caught a crime. He had witnessed love in its truest form. Ethan shut the laptop. The room filled with nothing but the sound of rain and his own heartbeat. He knew something inside him had shifted forever. No one needed to tell him what to do next. Deep down, he understood. He could never go back to being the same man again. Ethan stood before the window where the golden light bled into the thick curtain of rain. Each drop struck the glass like a quiet reminder of all the time he had let slip away. In the reflection, he saw a stranger, a hollow face, tired eyes, a man who had forgotten how to look at anything that truly mattered. He stared at his own image and whispered, "Who have I become?" Memories came rushing back like a broken tide. He saw the hospital room again, Emma's hand gripping his, her voice faint but certain. "If anything happens, love our son, Ethan. Promise me." It had sounded like an afterthought then, but now it felt like a farewell. Hours later, she was gone. He remembered holding Liam for the first time, a tiny, wrinkled body, fragile breath, eyes closed tight. Someone had said, "He looks just like his mother." Ethan couldn't bear to look. In his heart, death and life had arrived hand in hand, and he didn't know how to love something that reminded him of everything he'd lost. "He's going to need you," the doctor had told him. "Children like him need more love than most." Ethan nodded, but inside he was numb. So he buried himself in blueprints and deadlines, building towers that touched the clouds, as if height could save him from grief. Nannies came and went, leaving behind the same words. "He's too difficult. Nothing works." Ethan wrote checks in silence, replacing names, replacing faces. As long as someone else stayed by Liam's side, he told himself he was doing enough. Until the day he watched Grace on the screen. She was in the kitchen, slicing vegetables, humming softly. Her voice was gentle, full of warmth. Liam sat on the floor, tapping a spoon against a pot, giggling at the sound. For the first time, Ethan realized how joy could live inside such simple moments. In the next clip, Grace was feeding Liam. The boy shook his head, lips pressed tight, sauce smeared on his cheek. Grace didn't sigh, didn't scold. "It's okay," she said calmly. "Let's try again, just a little one. You'll like it." She made the spoon fly like an airplane, and Liam laughed, opened his mouth, swallowed. Grace clapped, her face lighting up. "See? You did it!" Ethan's throat tightened. He remembered the last time he tried the same thing. 3 spoonfuls, that was all. When Liam refused, he had set the spoon down and said flatly, "You handle it. I have work." Now he understood. It wasn't Liam who was difficult. It was him. He had never really tried. He wasn't out of time, just out of courage. He feared loving his son because love meant accepting that Emma was truly gone. "Grace makes it look so easy," he murmured. But then the truth hit him. It wasn't easy. She simply wasn't afraid to love. And he was a man who had lived too long behind his fear. Ethan placed a hand on the window pane. The glass was cold, the rain tracing thin rivers like tears. He looked down at the yard, glimmering under the dim lights. "My boy," he whispered, his voice almost lost in the rain. "I've been here all along, but you never really had a father." The words were soft, but they cut deep. Regret rose in him like a tide, yet beneath it something small began to stir. Resolve. Tomorrow will be different, he told himself, not as a promise to ease the guilt, but as a vow born of truth. For the first time in years, Ethan understood he still had a chance to truly see his son, and in doing so, to finally see himself. That night, the rain had stopped. Seattle lay hushed under a misty quiet, the street lights casting pools of amber across the wet pavement. Ethan still sat at his desk, his eyes sore from hours of watching. He moved the cursor to another file, labeled Night, 11:47 p.m. The footage flickered to life. The room was dim, lit only by a small star-shaped lamp beside Liam's bed. The boy lay asleep, cheeks flushed with fever. Grace sat beside him, a damp cloth in her hand, gently wiping his forehead. "You're burning up, huh?" she whispered. "It's okay. I'm right here." Her voice was a lullaby in itself, soft, thread-thin, fragile as light. She hummed a tune with no melody, words barely audible, but the tenderness in her tone made Ethan's heart tighten. He could see her shoulders tremble each time Liam coughed. Every few minutes, Grace checked his temperature again. 102.2 degrees. Her brows furrowed, but she didn't panic. She crushed medicine, mixed it into water, and fed him spoon by spoon, waiting patiently for each swallow. Every motion was careful, deliberate, and filled with care. When it was done, she didn't leave. She stayed seated, fingers interlaced, eyes shadowed with fatigue but filled with warmth. From time to time she adjusted the blanket, rubbed the boy's chest gently, whispering, "Sleep, Liam. I'm here." Ethan couldn't move. The camera's grainy image showed a young woman in a wrinkled uniform, hair undone, sitting in the dark. And yet she glowed with a quiet light, one that had never existed in his perfect empty house. He saw her exhaustion, her trembling hands, the faint blue beneath her eyes. But more than anything, he saw devotion. Grace wasn't being paid for those hours. No one had asked her to stay. No one was watching. That was what made it real. She stayed not out of duty, but out of love. Ethan rested his forehead against his hand, a sharp ache spreading through his chest. He thought about himself, a man who could design towers of steel and glass, sign million-dollar contracts, yet couldn't keep a child warm under his own roof. "How does she love so easily?" he whispered. Part of him wanted to believe it was a woman's instinct, but deeper down he knew it was a choice. Grace chose to love, to stay, to open her heart, even when life had given her every reason not to. He closed his eyes, and for a moment Emma's face appeared. What would she say if she saw him now? A man too afraid to love his own son, too broken to give what mattered most. He couldn't hold it back anymore. Emotions swelled and spilled. The tears came silently, unnoticed. No sobs, just a trembling breath and the quiet sound of water hitting wood. He felt shame. Shame for doubting her, for assuming the worst. He felt pain at realizing how poor he truly was, not in wealth, but in love, in courage, in fatherhood. And through that pain, something softer bloomed. Gratitude. "Thank you, Grace. Thank you for giving my son the love I never dared to give," he whispered, voice raw and low. "Thank you for teaching me how to love without fear." Outside, the rain returned, gentle as a lullaby. And on the glowing screen, the woman still sat there, guarding a child's fragile sleep, unaware that she had just done what no one else could. She had awakened a father's heart. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat by his desk, the pale light of the monitor washing over his tired face. The image of Grace watching over Liam replayed endlessly in his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her wiping the boy's forehead, her trembling hand steady, her faint smile glowing in the dark. For the first time in years, he felt something alive stirring inside him. When dawn came and a gray light spilled through the curtains, Ethan knew what he had to do. He went down to the kitchen just as the clock struck 7. The sound of the door startled Grace. She stepped in, hair damp from the morning mist, her face pale with exhaustion after a sleepless night. When she saw him standing there, she froze, her fingers tightening on the strap of her bag. "Good morning, Mr. Miller," she said quietly, her voice carrying a hint of tension. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then drew a deep breath. "Grace, I need to talk to you." She hesitated, then nodded. He gestured toward the table. They sat across from each other, the kitchen bathed in soft morning light, so still that the ticking of the wall clock felt painfully loud. Ethan rested his palms on the table, his gaze heavy. "I installed cameras in the house," he began, his voice low, each word scraping against his throat. "I didn't trust you. I thought you might hurt Liam. I was afraid. And because I was afraid, I became someone I never wanted to be." Grace looked up. The light from the window caught her eyes. For a second she froze, then simply exhaled. No anger, no accusation. "I thought there was something strange," she murmured. "But I didn't think you'd actually—" "I'm sorry." Ethan lowered his head, his voice breaking. "I watched the videos all night, and I saw the truth. I'm the only one who failed here." He paused, rubbing his temples. "Grace, can you teach me?" She frowned slightly. Teach you what? Teach me how to be a father. The words hung in the air. The morning light poured across his face, revealing every crack, every weary line he'd tried to hide. Grace studied him quietly, as if searching for something in his eyes. Then, slowly, she smiled, a small, gentle smile that carried warmth enough to fill the room. "You don't need lessons, Ethan," she said softly, calling him by his name for the first time. "You just need to be there. Let him see that you're really looking at him." The words cut deep, painful, but awakening. A soft sound broke the silence. Footsteps on the stairs. They turned. Liam stood at the bottom step, clutching his stuffed bear, hair tousled, eyes still heavy with sleep. He looked at his father, then at Grace, hesitant, uncertain. Ethan rose, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it echo in his ears. He swallowed, then spoke, voice trembling but firm. "Come here, buddy. Come to Dad." The boy didn't move at first. His blue eyes darted between them, searching for safety. Grace gave a gentle nod and smiled. "Go on, sweetheart. Your dad's waiting." Liam took a cautious step, then another. He stopped, looked up at Grace one more time, and finally ran forward, his tiny feet tapping against the wooden floor. Ethan bent down, arms open wide. When the boy reached him, his small body hit Ethan's chest with a warmth that shattered every wall he'd built around his heart. He held his son tightly, shaking. For the first time in 5 years, he felt Liam's breath against his neck, the soft scent of his hair, the rhythm of his heartbeat. The boy stiffened for a moment, then slowly relaxed, wrapping his little arms around Ethan's shoulders. "I'm here now," Ethan whispered, tears spilling freely. "I'm here, son." From the kitchen doorway, Grace watched silently, one hand pressed to her chest, eyes glistening. She knew in that fragile, trembling moment, 2 souls had just been born again, a child who finally had a father, and a man who finally learned how to love. Morning light spilled through the window, weaving through the branches outside and painting the floor in a soft golden hue. Liam was still curled up in Ethan's arms, his small face resting on his father's shoulder. The boy had fallen back asleep after their first embrace. Ethan didn't move, afraid the moment would vanish if he even breathed too loudly. He sat there, motionless, their breathing sinking quietly. From the doorway, Grace watched with a gentle smile, the kind reserved for witnessing miracles. When Liam finally woke, the sun had grown brighter. Grace rolled up her sleeves. "Today, let me show you a few things," she said softly. Ethan nodded, awkward as a student afraid of failing. "Where do I start?" he asked. "Breakfast," Grace replied, setting a small bowl of oatmeal on the table. "Feed him 1 spoon at a time. If he refuses, don't rush. Patience, like waiting for the sunrise." Ethan sat across from his son. Liam stared back, curious yet cautious. Ethan smiled, hands trembling, as he lifted the spoon and blew on it. "Here we go, buddy. Just a little." The boy turned his head away. Ethan sighed and almost put the spoon down when Grace's calm voice came from behind him. "Don't stop. Try again. Gentler this time." He smiled faintly, trying once more. "Look, an airplane's coming," he said, his tone playful but shy. Liam looked up, intrigued by the moving spoon. The boy opened his mouth, tasted the food, then swallowed. Ethan froze for a second before breaking into a wide smile, tears spilling down his face. "See?" Grace said softly. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to love." The morning passed with Grace teaching him everything: how to dress Liam, button the tiny shirts, comb his hair, brush his teeth with a dinosaur toothbrush. Ethan fumbled through it all, dropping toothpaste, mismatching buttons, making Liam giggle. Every laugh felt like sunlight breaking through the years of darkness that had shrouded their home. By noon, they sat in the living room. Grace read quietly while Ethan and Liam played with puzzle pieces on the carpet. Colors scattered everywhere. Liam studied the shapes, then proudly placed the final piece. Ethan cheered, "That's it, champ," and held up his hand. Liam pressed his tiny palm against it, their first high five. As evening came, Grace showed Ethan how to tell a bedtime story. He held a small picture book, his voice trembling slightly. Once upon a time, there was a brave little bear. Liam lay beneath the blanket, eyes fluttering shut. Halfway through the story, the boy stirred, his lips moving. Ethan leaned closer. A faint sound escaped, soft, uncertain, but clear. "Dad." He froze, just one word, fragile, trembling, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. He laughed and cried all at once, his voice breaking with joy. Pulling Liam close, he whispered through his tears, "I'm here, buddy. Dad's here." Grace stood outside the door, quietly closing it. Inside, the sound of Ethan's gentle storytelling blended with the whisper of rain against the windows. The day ended simply, awkward, imperfect, but whole. For Ethan, it wasn't just a day with his son, it was the first day he truly lived. Night had settled softly over the house, and only the faint rustle of wind through the trees broke the silence. Liam was asleep, his breathing slow and even. Ethan sat in the living room, the warm lamplight painting his face in muted gold. Grace brought out 2 cups of tea and set them on the table. The scent of mint drifted through the air, calming, gentle, like the night itself. "Are you tired?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, just, there are things I've never said out loud." She stayed quiet, waiting. It took him a long moment before he finally spoke, his voice low, rough, trembling. "When Emma died, I held Liam in my arms, but couldn't look at him. She didn't make it through childbirth. And ever since that moment, I believed it was my fault. That if I hadn't wanted a child, if I just stopped her, maybe she'd still be here." He paused, his fingers clenching together. "Every time I looked at Liam, I saw my mistake. My loss? The man who killed the woman he loved?" His words cracked the silence in half. Grace listened, her eyes reflecting a quiet sorrow. Then she reached out, laying a gentle hand over his. Her voice was soft, almost a lullaby. "You didn't take her away, Ethan. Emma gave you the most beautiful part of herself, Liam. He isn't proof of your loss. He's proof that love still lives on. You just have to look again and see it." Ethan lowered his head, his breath unsteady. "But I was never the father he needed." Grace smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Liam doesn't need a perfect father. He just needs a real one. Someone who loves, who fails, who tries again. Someone like you." Her words hung in the air, tender and true. Something inside Ethan loosened, melting quietly like snow in spring. After a moment, Grace exhaled, her shoulders trembling slightly. "I know what loss feels like, Ethan. I was married once. We tried to have children for years, but we couldn't. He said I was broken, that a woman who can't be a mother isn't worth anything. And then he left." Ethan turned toward her, eyes filled with disbelief and empathy. "Grace," she smiled, not sadly, but with peace. "For a long time, I thought I had nothing left to give. But then I met Liam, and he showed me there are many ways to be a mother, just like there are many ways to love." Ethan didn't answer. He simply took her hand in his, holding it gently. No promises, no grand words. Just 2 people, once broken, now finding solace in each other's quiet company. They sat there, side by side, looking toward the room where the child slept peacefully. And in that silence, the past no longer hurt. It had become the beginning of love. Outside, night had deepened. The 2 cups of tea on the table had gone cold, their faint scent of mint still lingering. Ethan and Grace sat in silence, the kind of silence that wasn't heavy anymore, but warm, like the stillness after a storm when you can finally hear your own heartbeat. From that night onward, Ethan changed completely. He started staying home more, closing his laptop early, turning off his phone. Each morning, he and Grace helped Liam get dressed, brush his teeth, and eat breakfast. The boy still struggled, spilling water or dropping his spoon, but Ethan only laughed and helped him clean up. In those quiet routines, he felt alive again. Grace often watched from a distance, Ethan reading picture books to Liam helping him pronounce words, listening to his scattered thoughts. In the soft morning light, he seemed like a different man, gentle, steady, and full of love. One day, Grace suggested, "You should join a parent group, other fathers with special children. You'll find people who understand." Ethan nodded. The first time he entered that small community hall, he saw faces worn by exhaustion, yet glowing with resilience. They shared stories of failure and miracles, days when just one smile from their child made everything worth it. Ethan listened, smiled, and finally said, "I used to think love was instinct, but it's not. It's something you have to practice." The room filled with quiet applause. For the first time, he didn't feel alone. After that, he began recording moments with his camera, not hidden surveillance anymore, but keepsakes. Little pieces of joy. Liam coloring, buttoning his shirt, sleeping on his father's shoulder. Each photo was a fragment of the new life they were building together. And in every frame, there was always Grace, standing nearby, smiling softly, watching over them both. One late afternoon, as the light faded, Ethan saw her in the garden cutting lavender to dry. He walked over, hesitant. "Grace?" She looked up. "Yes?" "I don't think I've ever said this properly," he began, voice unsteady. "Thank you for coming here, for staying." She smiled, the kind of smile that warmed the air. "I didn't do much, Ethan. I just did what my heart told me." He met her eyes. "And my heart only beats again because of you." Her smile faded. For a second, surprise flickered in her gaze. Then she took a step back, shaking her head. "Don't, Ethan, please. I'm your employee. If people find out, they'll think I took advantage." "Grace!" "I'm sorry," she interrupted softly, her voice trembling. "I can't. I don't want to ruin what you've just rebuilt." After that, the air between them changed. Grace still worked, still cared for Liam, but something fragile hung in the space between every glance, every word. Ethan tried to speak to her, but she always found something to do, some reason to walk away. At night, he'd pass the living room and see her mending Liam's clothes, her face half lit, distant. Then one rainy night, the world outside blurred under silver streaks of water. Ethan sat on the couch, photos spread out before him. Snapshots of love. His fingers stopped at one picture, Liam laughing in Grace's arms, and he realized love had been there all along, waiting for him to admit it. The door creaked open. Grace stood there, soaked, her breath trembling. Her eyes shone in the dim light. "Ethan," she whispered. "I wasn't going to come, but I can't keep pretending." He rose slowly. "Why?" Her lips quivered in a small, broken smile. "Because I'm scared. Scared of what people will say. Scared of losing my job. But more than anything, scared of losing you." Ethan took her cold hand in his, holding it firmly. "I can't promise perfection," he said quietly, "but I can promise I'll never leave you, like the world once did." Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. He pulled her into his arms. No more words needed. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing the world clean. Inside, two hearts once broken now beat together, slow, steady, real. The kind of love that doesn't rush, doesn't ask for permission. The kind that simply stays. After that rainy night, Ethan's life entered a new chapter. The awkward silences were gone, replaced by a quiet tenderness. as if they had been waiting for that moment all along, just needing courage to name it. When Ethan held Grace's hand while walking through the garden, he knew there was nothing left to hide. In the days that followed, he stopped caring about glances or whispers. But the world wasn't kind to love that crossed its invisible lines. Rumors spread quickly. During a family gathering, his sister Julia looked at him in disbelief. "Have you lost your mind, Ethan? She used to be your housekeeper." Ethan met her gaze calmly. "No, Julia, she's the reason my son smiled for the first time in years. She's the reason I learned how to love again." Julia froze, wanting to argue, but said nothing. There was truth in his voice that silenced judgment. After that day, Ethan officially introduced Grace as the woman he loved. Some family members accepted it, others didn't. But Ethan didn't care. For the first time, he chose what made him happy instead of what made others comfortable. Grace left her position at his home, not as a resignation, but as a rebirth. She was no longer an employee. She was his partner, his equal, Liam's mother in every way that mattered. Yet she wanted to do more. One evening, she said softly, "Ethan, I want to study again. I want to major in special education to help children like Liam." Ethan smiled, his eyes lighting up with pride. "Then you will. I'll take care of everything else." He enrolled her at a nearby university, bought her books and a laptop, and stayed up with her at night, helping review notes after Liam fell asleep. Grace studied with passion, as if reclaiming a life once stolen from her. Ethan watched her and felt a pride deeper than any success he'd ever had. During the day, he took care of Liam himself, cooking, dressing him, teaching him to write his first letters. Each small task, though imperfect, made him feel whole again. Liam sensed it too, becoming more attached, more joyful. One evening, Grace returned late from class. She opened the door to find Ethan and Liam asleep on the couch, father and son curled together, Lego pieces scattered on the coffee table, a half-open storybook resting on Ethan's lap. She smiled through tears. Happiness, she thought, sometimes looked exactly like this. Then came a spring morning that neither of them would forget. As they prepared breakfast, Liam suddenly looked up, his voice soft but clear. "Mommy." "Grace?" The spoon in Ethan's hand froze mid-air. Grace turned, her eyes wide. Liam smiled and ran toward her, wrapping his arms around her legs. She knelt down, hugging him tightly. "Did you just call me Mommy?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Liam nodded, his little face glowing with joy. Ethan's throat tightened. He stepped forward and gathered them both into his arms. They all cried, tears not of sorrow, but of the peace that comes when love finally finds its home. In that sunlit kitchen, laughter mingled with Liam's small voice repeating, "Mommy Grace." And in that moment, Ethan knew his life had truly begun. Time drifted by like a soft wind across the seasons. The little house at the end of the quiet street was still filled with laughter, the smell of cookies, and children's songs floating from the upstairs room. Years had passed since the day Ethan first turned on that hidden camera to watch the woman he didn't trust. And now, both his home and his heart had changed forever. Grace had graduated with honors and become a teacher at a special education school. Her students adored her. Her colleagues respected her. Every day, she poured love and patience into the children she taught, just as she once did with Liam. Ethan often waited outside the school gate, watching her with quiet pride, his smile carrying the calm of a man who had finally found what truly mattered. Liam was 8 now, studying in an inclusive classroom. He wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but his eyes shone brighter than anyone's. He loved to draw, to sing, and every afternoon he ran first into his mother's arms, then into his father's. Always the 3 of them, always complete. One golden summer afternoon, the park shimmered under the sunlight. Ethan sat on a wooden bench holding an old camera, the same one he'd used years ago. He played the first recording. The faded image flickered. Grace kneeling with open arms, Liam toddling toward her, his little face glowing with a smile. The soft crackle of the old footage tugged at Ethan's chest. He stared at the screen for a moment, then lifted his eyes, and there it was, the same scene, but real, vivid, alive. Grace stood a few yards away, arms wide open, calling Liam. The boy, taller now, ran toward her, laughter ringing through the warm air. Ethan no longer needed the camera. He turned it off, stood up, and walked toward them. When Liam crashed into Grace's embrace, Ethan reached out and pulled them both close. The scent of sun, hair, and happiness blended around him. His voice trembled as he whispered, "I love you both." Grace looked up, eyes shimmering. Liam tilted his head from his father's chest and smiled, his words soft but sure. "Love you, Mommy. Love you, Daddy." Ethan closed his eyes and held them tighter. For a moment, everything stood still. The past dissolved. The pain faded. All that remained was love, pure, simple, and infinite. Above them, the sunset spilled gold across the sky, completing a circle, one that began in fear and ended in love. Ethan smiled and murmured to himself, "Once I installed cameras to find someone's faults, but what I discovered was the truth about myself, that love had always been there, just waiting for me to be brave enough to see it." He looked ahead, where Grace and Liam ran together through the sunlight, their laughter echoing through the park. The circle had closed, not to end, but to begin again. A new life, whole, complete.